sorry for being horribly random with the bell. Is this going to be visible? Maybe.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome to this celebration of life and love. We come together today from so many places. Our paths are varied, our lives are different, but one thing unites us all in some way or another. To some degree or another, all of our lives have been touched by this one life that we come together to celebrate today. Jack. Death brings us together like nothing else. We feel grief, we feel sadness, of course, but these are far from our only feelings. We also feel gratitude and joy. We feel the fullness and the complexity and the perfection and the injustice. We feel so many things all at once. So we have come together for this time, this special time out of time, to listen to beautiful music, to share stories, and to remember him. We will begin by lighting our chalice, practice here at First Church and in Unitarian Universalism that Jack participated in. Many of you are mathematicians and engineers, so I'll let you do the math. It was a lot of times, and so if you happen to know the chalice lighting, I'll invite you to join me. Please join me in saying, life is a gift for which we are grateful. We gather in community to celebrate the glories and the mysteries of this great gift. We will be hearing from a number of people, and a little bit later, you will all have an opportunity to share stories. And we will begin. Greg Duckworth is bringing some memories from Alpha Radford, who knew Jack for a very, very long time. So, Greg, please come forward.
Thank you, Chris. About this time yesterday, I was having a visit with Alpha at her home. She is First Church Belmont's Minister of Music Emeritus, who knew Jack very well. Upon hearing of Jack's passing, Alpha was deeply affected, I could tell. I asked if she'd like to attend this celebration and give a remembrance, and she thought about it for a bit. Unfortunately, she's kind of leery about getting out and getting sick in public. She's fairly housebound right now and said that she didn't feel she could do it. But then she nominated me to do it for her. So I gathered a few thoughts from her and put them together. And here's my best effort at recreating some of the feelings that Alpha had yesterday. Although perhaps not politically or factually correct, her first remembrance of Jack was consistent with Woody Allen's statement that 90% of success is showing up. Except that Alpha's remembrance of Jack had a few additional amendments, and that was 90% of Jack's success was showing up reliably, on time, and also having a great voice. And this appears to be an ordered list. If you know Alpha, that's the way it goes. She was very happy with Jack and reiterated many times that he was very reliable in coming to choir. Then, noting that she and Jack were contemporaries, she was impressed not only with his reliability and timeliness, but also his academic credentials. And despite these academic credentials, she noted that Jack was always good-natured and fun to be with. something that cannot always be said about MIT quadruple threats, meaning BS, MS, SCD, and a faculty member to boot. It's with doubly deep regret that I feel qualified to say this, having the same checkered past at MIT, although my tenure as a faculty member was not nearly as long as Jack's. It's really my regret that while I got degrees from MIT EECS while Jack was there and teaching, I never got a chance to take a course from him, nor did I get to meet him and talk. And even more regrettably, in my long tenure and Jack's even longer tenure here, I didn't get a chance to really meet with him and talk here either. I know this is a very great loss for me. I can also say that the tone of Alpha's voice and her bearing, this was a great loss for her too. With that, my condolences to Jack's family and to the FCB community that was lucky enough to get to know Jack well. I'm here to learn more and to make up for a little bit of lost time. Thank you.
I first met Jack briefly in 1972, but I got to know him much better when he was my host for my first sabbatical leave at MIT in 1973-74. I got then to know his taste for Chinese food when he frequently took his group to lunch at Joyce Chen's in Central Square. I continued to work with him on subsequent visits and also remotely, which gradually got easier over the decades as things like email were invented, until he gradually partially withdrew from leading CSG to do things like starting companies, and Arvind had arrived, and the emphasis on leadership gradually changed in the group. But for all Jack's work, all his career, he had a guiding vision, a dream, if you like, that the theoretical model of computation should be the same all the way through, whether you were thinking of the tiniest function in a program or the running of an enormous data center of the kind we're hearing about today. And that was the basic principle behind that, as he put it, was data does not change. That is to say, once you've made it, it was there. You could copy it with changes, but it itself never changed. And if you follow that through, that simplifies a whole lot of things. But this isn't the time or place to go into all that. Actually, I used to pronounce it, data do not change. And we had a running joke about that, which went on for decades. I should say that revisiting this early work with Jack as part of my contribution to editing the forthcoming book of Dennis and Gao's work, which Nick Gao and Nikhil are in the process of pushing through the final stages, that's brought back very pleasant memories of how it all came together. But that's only part of the story. I had the privilege of proposing the health of Therese and Jack, bride and groom, at their wedding in 1982. And after that, many pleasant visits to their home in Belmont. Therese remembers my accompanying Jack in Schubert's El König. That was when I could still have the energy to play it all the way through on Jack's splendid Steinway, which is now happily still among music lovers at the Brookline School of Music. But we also did gentler Lieder, Haydn, Röslein, Who is Sylvia, and so on. But our shared love of music wasn't just a matter of making music together. Jack sang in the Tanglewood Festival chorus, and that allowed him to tell us about the shortcut from the Mass Pike to the Tanglewood Shed, almost completely made up. Now, I see that's ambiguous. It wasn't that Jack's route was almost completely made up, it was the roads themselves were almost completely made up. There was a bit of gravel which was hair-raising when you first came to it towards the end. And that's the kind of ambiguity which could turn into a problem in formal semantics, which is the kind of thing Jack would have loved. The roads, I should say, are better now. The main roads are better now. It used to be a very handy shortcut after the concert to get quickly back to the Mass Pike, avoiding the traffic. But as I say, that was half a century ago, and things have improved. But also we remember several visits together to Tanglewood when Jack wasn't singing, sharing a picnic on the lawn and listening, sitting fairly near the shed, so we could also hear the concert. He was a good bloke. So now, as we listen to Elgar's account of one of his friends who reminded him of Nimrod, a mighty hunter before the Lord, let's remember Jack. May he rest in peace, and as they say, may his memory be a blessing.
So in just a moment, we'll invite any of you forward who would like to share a memory or a story of Jack, but I'll begin with this, which was sent from Ken and Nicole Bernstein, who are in Paris, and so couldn't make it today, but they sent these words. Nicole writes, Ken and I are honored to participate in Jack's celebration of life, even if from across the Atlantic. Ken has fond memories of Jack's teaching at MIT and appreciated his guidance toward his bachelor's degree. He was pleasantly surprised to be able to connect with Jack here at First Church. Jack introduced Ken and me, she says, to the original Arlington Science and Spirituality group. Jack and Edwin Taylor subsequently brought that group here to First Church. While in the Science and Spirituality First Church group, we appreciated Jack's wise contributions. He didn't chit-chat. His comments were always interesting and mind-opening. He didn't take himself seriously, although he was serious. We enjoyed his subdued but to-the-point sense of humor. Wherever you are, happy travels, Jack. We send you our love. And so now, if anyone else would like to share, we invite you to come forward. Please use the microphone so folks can hear and the people who are streaming can hear. But if you'd like to share anything, please come forward now.
My name is Geeta, and I first met Jack 50 years ago at UC, University of California, Irvine, where my husband Arvind started his academic career. I thought Jack was quintessential MIT, even though I'd never been to MIT. Jack looked dapper, dressed in a dark suit, quite handsome, but his demeanor was casual and unthreatening and nerdy. Jack was already a young leader in the rapidly growing field of computer science. At that data flow architecture workshop at UC Irvine, Jack invited Arvind to join his group at MIT. He had a remarkable mind, of course, but I'd like to share what my son, who's now 47, clearly remembers of Jack. And to quote him, he said, I remember as a young child, he was incredibly gentle and kind with me. Even when I barely learned to speak, I used to call out to him, "Hi, Jack," whenever I spied him. My parents took me in a backpack on several hikes with him, and I believe I was a flower boy, also dapper in my dark Indian coat, at his wedding to Therese. I remember as I grew older how Dad continued to speak very highly of him as a mentor and an icon in the field. And even though the memory of him could have been of an intimidating professor, instead, I remember mostly his simple, kind smile. Arvind joined MIT in 1979 thanks to Jack. Jack lived in Belmont then and often invited students and young faculty like Arvind and me with our toddlers for cooking dinner together. One day I asked him, what else did he like besides computers? In his disarming manner, he said, in order of importance, music, women, and food. Well, he did say that, I'm not making it up. Well, he loved his Steinway piano and choral singing, married Therese soon after, and didn't want to let his students graduate, especially if they could cook Chinese food. We have fond memories of those days at his casual home and learned the value of continuing lifelong relationships with students. I will miss him.
Hi, my name is Bruce Kazuma. I'm a member of First Church here. I knew Jack primarily through this church. He was a longtime fixture of the bass section in the senior choir. If you knew the choir and you knew him, you knew Alpha. What impressed me most about Jack was that even in his later days with us, if there was something that was wrong, he would mention it. If the pitch was off, if the rhythm was off. But it wasn't that he mentioned it. It's how he mentioned it and why he mentioned it. It wasn't that it wasn't, I'm going to use this somewhat pejoratively, mathematically precise. It's that it wasn't in service of what the composer meant, of what we were doing with the music. That's why he cared. That's all I needed to know about Jack.
Hi, how are you? My name's Nick Gal. My father was a former student of Jack's. I think he was technically the first PhD student from mainland China of Jack's at MIT. So when I met Jack, I was 7 years old, just here from China, and so over the years, I've had a chance to really watch from the sidelines as he collaborated with my father on a number of different initiatives. And you probably have heard others here talk about data flow as one of their seminal research topics, which has become more interesting these days with AI. My memories of Jack were just how intense his intellect was. Clearly my father had a huge amount of respect for him, but I saw it firsthand when he would come over once to a family dinner and decided to just test me on some sort of math puzzle. And then when he saw that I was struggling, he probably decided that his conversation with me had to be more cursory than deep. But he was always a good cheer. He had a great sense of humor. And one thing I really remember about him was just how patient and kind and really without any hint of hubris, given how much of an intellect Jack was. And it could be something very, very simple or an area that he didn't know about, but my conversation with him was always left me with just that sense of humility that Jack brought. And then they collaborated, my father and him collaborated all the way through the decades, right? Probably something going out close to 40 years of technical collaboration. So I really wanted to come here and say, first, thank you to Jack, because he brought my father, gave him the chance to come to the United States and study in a foreign country. And then secondly, just to appreciate the friendship with Jack and his family, and all the best to Therese and his children. Take care.
Hello, my name is Paul Santos. Some of you know me. Most of you knew Jack as a fellow parishioner, which I did too. he was also my former professor at MIT. So when I got to meet him, I didn't really, I'm not a music person, so I didn't really participate in much of the music stuff that he got involved in, but we would have occasional conversations from time to time. And the last time we talked, which might have been several years ago, we were talking about his work on associative memories in computers. That's really, I think you all know Jack pretty well, so I don't need to say more about that. But what I wanted to share with you is some of the early days of Jack. As I say, he was my professor at MIT in electrical engineering. I believe the course was 6-52. That was one of the structures courses. In those days, the Department of Electrical Engineering thought that computer science was pretty soft stuff, like psychology or something. And MIT had a bunch of Young Turk professors. One of them was Jack. And they were teaching computer science courses, which I devoured. I think I would have been a very unhappy standard electrical engineer, but I was really, really interested in computers. So he, along with these other Young Turks, eventually convinced the Department of Electrical Engineering at MIT, Course 6, to become Department of Electrical Engineering and Computer Science. So I think that, in my estimation, that is one of the really, really powerful legacies that Jack has left us. And I'll finish with a little humorous anecdote from my time there. I was studying late in my dorm room one night, and one of my roommates came in. I said, "Oh, you're here early. I thought you were going to do something else." He says, "Yes, we were down playing Space War, a very early computer video game, which was in one of the MIT labs, available to people. And we were gambling on Space War, and guess what? Jack Dennis came in and kicked us out." And that's what I want to leave you with is, you can picture Jack looking sternly at these students who were probably maybe 10 or 15 years younger than he, but not much. "You guys better not do this anymore. Get out of here." So that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for these stories, again, for this beautiful music and this precious time together. After we're done here, the family invites you for a brief moment with them in a receiving line outside those doors there in the back. Today, and so far past this day, he will be with you. When you are dapper and handsome, unthreatening, and nerdy, he will be with you. When you are playing and gambling at Space War only to be kicked out by your mentor, he will be with you. When you care deeply about the notes and the quality, in service of the composer and the purpose we are about, he will be with you. When you invite your students and their families into your home, forging lifelong relationships, when you have a grounding vision and a dream, he will be with you. When you are patient and kind, without any sense of hubris, he will be with you. When you test your colleagues' children on math puzzles, when you share shortcuts on made-up roads, he will be with you. When you have picnics and beautiful music close enough to the shells so you can really hear, he will be with you. When you are an MIT quadruple threat and still fun to be with, he will be with you. When you know that 90% of success is showing up reliably, on time, and with a great voice, he will be with you. When you don't chit-chat, but share comments which interest and open minds, he will be with you. When you know that data do not change, today and so far past this day, he will be with you. And so now it is time for we, the living, to go forth into all that remains of these lives. Blessed and guided by this life we celebrate today. We give thanks for Jack, for all he was in life, for the many ways we bear his fingerprints on our hearts and minds and souls. Amen.